Today's reading comes from the book of Jonah and summarizes much of the story of the prophet. Most of you are likely fairly familiar with Jonah and remember him as the guy who didn't listen to God, got himself swallowed up by a fish or a whale or whatever, and then decided to listen to God, go where he was supposed to go, and do what he was supposed to do. It sure makes for a fun story in Sunday school, or what we call faith formation. But is there more to Jonah than just a story for kids? Absolutely there is. And as we dive into the context surrounding the story of Jonah, I think you'll find that it quickly becomes a little less kid-friendly. Starting with the reason for why Jonah might not have wanted to go to the city of Nineveh in the first place. We'll read that God tells Jonah to go to Nineveh and cry out against it. And Jonah's immediate reaction is, nope, hard pass. Why is this Jonah's reaction? And do we unfairly judge Jonah's initial defiance? Do we think we would be more obedient followers of God? Well, let's take a closer look at the wicked city of Nineveh. It was the capital and largest city of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, as well as the largest city in the world for several decades. You'll remember that Assyria, for a time, was the mortal enemy of Israel. It was the Assyrian Empire that was responsible for destroying the northern kingdom of Israel, resulting in the people being sent into exile, marking the first great exile of Israel, known today as the Assyrian exile. Now, Jonah's story was set in the reign of King Jeroboam II of the northern kingdom, not too long before the kingdom's destruction and the Assyrian exile took place. But the book of Jonah is believed to have been written hundreds of years later, after the second great exile, the Babylonian exile, in the late 5th to early 4th century BCE, a time when the author would have been well aware of the pain and destruction the Assyrian Empire, of which Nineveh was a part, would bring upon Israel. We learn from elsewhere in Scripture that Jonah lived in a town called Gath-Hepher, just northeast of Nazareth, in the region of Galilee of the northern kingdom of Israel, a kingdom that, in the not-so-distant future, would be destroyed by the Assyrian Empire. So, in summary, God was telling Jonah to go to the capital of the very empire that would decimate his nation, his people, and force many of them into bondage and exile. And God was telling him, just him, to bring the city a message of criticism, condemnation, and impending doom. I don't know about you, but knowing all that, Jonah's reaction to the monumental task God has set before him seems about right. Now, Jonah sprints southwest to the port city of Joppa, set on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea and known as the Gateway to the West. It was the ideal place to go to try and get as far away from Nineveh as humanly possible. He boards a boat to Tarshish, an unknown port city in the western region of the Mediterranean, often believed to have been on the southern coast of Spain. Jonah could not get far enough away from Nineveh, God, and God's will fast enough. But as we remember and will hear in the story, God does some pretty incredible things to bring Jonah back sending a massive storm and a mythological fish. And when Jonah finally does get to Nineveh and performs the task for which he was called, God again does some pretty incredible things. But this time, instead of God doing something incredible to Jonah, God does something incredible through him. And then, God does yet another incredible thing that I believe should make us all ponder our call in the world today.